Hey everybody, Jason and John here, Everyday Crypto, sponsored by CryptoTaxShield.com. Jason, appreciate you doing another episode with me.
John, I appreciate it as always.
So talking to a buddy of mine over the weekend, trying to explain this whole Bitcoin thing, and I could tell he was getting a little frustrated. I was getting a little frustrated trying to explain sort of the value proposition, if we want to put that in quotes, of Bitcoin and perhaps crypto and holistically. And I just wondered, do you have this issue with people when you're talking to them, and how do you go about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, John. If I could, as always, if you find any entertainment or educational value in this all, please like and subscribe. It helps us help you, and we are not financial advisors. Do your own research.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, John, I have that problem. I really do. I can see it in their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
For years, I've been trying to tell people about the value proposition of Bitcoin for years.
Right.
And when the crypto markets are quiet, they don't even care. But when Bitcoin's at $78,000, they want to understand, but it's not clicking, right?
Right.
So let me see if I can just get this into the simplest form, right?
Sure.
So everyone I know, there's two types of people I know in my life right now at this point, at least that are within my age range.
Mm-hmm.
People who are investors and obsessed with investing, and all they care about is long-term wealth and retirement.
Right.
And people who have no clue about finances at all, and when you ask them about retirement, they say, yeah, I think I got $40,000 in my 401k.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to myself, like, $40,000, that's not going to cut it. That's not even going to come close. That's like what? Like if you're super frugal, that might get you through a year retirement. I don't know.
That's right.
So the question is, for most people who aren't obsessed with finances and investing, you're trying to get your wealth from today, your hard-earned paycheck from today, into the future,
mm-hmm.
to where you won't have to work, right? So at the very least, you want to at least hold the value. Let's put it into a candy bar. You have one candy bar today,
right?
But you want that candy bar 20 years from now when you retire. So you have $1, and that dollar buys that candy bar today. You can't put that dollar in the bank and expect it to buy the same candy bar 20 years down the road because of inflation. At today's current rate of inflation, your money's cut in half in approximately 7 years.
Wow.
The buying power of that dollar has gone down in 7 years, half. So now that candy bar is most likely in 7 years going to cost $2.
Right.
So in 20 years, it's probably going to cost $4 or $5. But you've only put it in the bank, so now you've only got $1 20 years from now.
Right.
That's the problem, right? So anything you invest in, you want to, at the very least, at the very minimum, outpace inflation.
Right.
But ideally, you want to do much better than that. So we know put money in banks is a horrible idea. So what other options do you have? Okay, you have stock market. All right, that's a great option. Long term, historically, it's been a pretty decent option.
Sure.
Here's the problem with the stock market. If you have a excellent financial advisor who averages you 9% a year return on your stock portfolio, mm-hmm. that's an A+ performance. 9% is considered A+ performance.
Right.
Well, right now they're saying inflation is like 9.1%, but really they fudge those numbers. It's much higher than that.
Absolutely.
So at the current rate of the stock market, 9% won't cut it either.
Right.
Let's say you buy real estate. Historically, real estate's been great for long-term wealth building.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is, especially if you live in cities where, like in Southern California, where real estate seems to always go up.
Sure.
But the problem with that is you pay 2% a year in property taxes. So over 20 years, you've paid 40% in property taxes. That takes away from the long-term value, although it's still a pretty good option.
Sure.
Bonds, forget about it. Bonds don't even keep up with inflation at this point, which is pretty crazy to say. So here's my value proposition.
Okay.
Bitcoin. Why Bitcoin? Because it's extremely scarce. There's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. Currently, there are 19 million Bitcoin. The next 2 million Bitcoin are going to take 120 years to come into existence. So out of the 19 million Bitcoin you have in existence today, only 2 million are for sale on exchanges. And that's in a very bad crypto market. Like right now, you'd think there'd be more for sale. There really isn't.
Right.
So that tells you that the people who are buying it do not sell it. They hold it long term. They have a long term vision and goal. They have a 100-year vision for this, right? It's not a 6-month trade. So scarcity. Your dollar is not scarce. That's why it's devaluing, right? You can say houses are somewhat scarce, but not really. Right. They're building all the time. And gold's extremely. People say gold. This is what bothers me. People say gold all the time. Gold's a store of wealth. Not really at all.
Right.
Gold's at the same price it was 10 years ago. And as far as scarcity goes, they just found a gold deposit in Rwanda that's going to more than double the supply of gold. More than double. So if you take Bitcoin's, it's only been in existence for 13 years.
Right.
But in those 13 years, even at times like this, it has greatly outpaced every other asset on earth as far as value.
Right.
I mean, if you compare the value of the dollar to Bitcoin or gold to Bitcoin or even housing to Bitcoin, there's really no comparison. Over the last 13 years, it's demolished every other asset.
Right.
So if it were me, and if I were worried about my retirement from 20 years from now, I would look at an asymmetric investment. And what asymmetric means is it has very little downside, but a lot of upside.
Right.
So you might buy Bitcoin today at 20,000, and maybe it goes down to 10,000 before it takes off again.
Sure.
But all the world's leading experts predict that Bitcoin will be $1 million of Bitcoin by the end of this decade. Right. $1 million per Bitcoin. Something you're buying now at $20,000 in 10 years, 8 years will be $1 million per Bitcoin. That's how you get to retirement.
Gotcha. That's
how you take wealth from today and transfer it into the future and increase value.
Got it.
Yeah. That's the shortest, simplest way I can really describe it. But it does get way more complicated than that. Sure. That's the simplest I can really.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And there's a lot of aha moments in what you were just talking about that I can always present to other folks. And I think a lot of times what confuses, particularly maybe somebody who's maybe 10 or 15 years beyond where we are in age, is they get a little intimidated by the tech side of things, right? Like, how do I do a wallet? How do I, you know what I mean? Like they just, but like anything, right? There's going to be growing pains in terms of learning something. You got to learn the verbiage. We've done shows on that where we've talked about, how to learn the vernacular of crypto. So I think that helps for sure. But no, this is a great help for sure. Yeah.
I'm going to bring home one more point, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I know we talked about this before, John, but this is really relevant to this conversation. Mm-hmm. People currently don't say the words Bitcoin supply shock.
Right.
But I'm extremely confident within the next couple of years, maybe 3 years at the latest, but most likely way before then, you're going to hear that term a lot.
Yeah.
Bitcoin supply shock. Because there'll come a point where right now, maybe 1% of the world actually owns or is interested in Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. But even they don't really understand how scarce the asset really is. It's extremely scarce.
Yeah.
There are 8 point something billion people on Earth. Who knows how many millionaires, how many billionaires, who knows how many corporations, endowments,
right, retirement
funds. All these things are at one point are going to wake up to this idea of wealth preservation. Mm-hmm. And it's I assume it's all going to happen at once, right?
Yep.
And when they do, they're going to race to go buy some.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only 2 million for sale, and there's 8 point something billion people on Earth, and there's how many corporate? There's just not that much out there.
Right.
And I imagine 10 years from now, owning one Bitcoin will be like the absurdity. Like if you own one Bitcoin, you will be considered a very rare individual.
Right.
Because each Bitcoin can be divided up into 1 million pieces, and they call that a Satoshi. So 1 millionth is one Satoshi. And I bet you most people will just own Satoshis. Just the scarcity of the asset. Supply shock at some point will kick in, and that's when this thing will go up dramatically in price value.
Yeah.
Much like real estate in Manhattan. A couple hundred years ago, no one cared about it.
Right.
Nobody wanted it, and you could buy it for cheap. And now you can't buy it at all.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I was reading an article, I think it was today, They were talking about in New York proper and in New York City proper, and particularly Manhattan. Like the average rent now is something like $5,000 to $7,000 for. I mean, a 200 square foot studio apartment.
Yeah.
Which it just blows my mind. As a Midwesterner, so if I had, I own my own house, but if I had to go rent an apartment, $500-$600, I could find something.
Yeah.
I can't imagine $5,000 or $7,000 just to have a tiny little box to stay in.
Yeah, we go on a little tangent real quick.
Sure.
I think you'd enjoy this.
Yeah.
So technology grows exponentially. It took us tens of thousands of years to figure out fire, tens of thousands of years to figure out the wheel, and then progressively these things added to each other. But when that thing grows exponentially, you can look at population. When I was born, I think there was like 2, maybe 3 billion people on Earth. I think it was 2.5 billion people on Earth. And now we're at 8 point something. And I'm only in my 40s, right? So you can see how fast this thing is. Let's just say another 40 years down the road, at that same pace, you take 8 billion people and you turn it into 50 billion people. Right? And this is technology. Technology is the exact same thing. Like, look how long it took when you probably remember when cable television came to your town.
Yep.
What a big deal that was. You went from 3 channels to like 30. It was amazing.
Yep.
Changed your life.
Oh, yeah.
Or when the Atari 2600 came out, or Pong, changed your life. And those increments in between life-changing technologies are getting smaller, 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 smaller. So much so that now technology happens without people even noticing.
Right.
Like, you'll see some guy doing something on his phone, and you're like, what's that? And he'll tell you, oh, it's been out for months. And you're like, what?
Right.
It's crazy. That's how exponential growth. Bitcoin is part of that technology growth. And it's relevant to really understand the correlation between humanity, exponential growth, and technology.
Sure.
Yeah.
Boy, we'll have to do an episode on that, because I think we could probably get pretty deep into the weeds on that. So yeah, you're 100% right. But Jason, thanks so much, man. Yeah, there's, like I said, there's some aha moments in what you talked about here today that I'm going to be able to use in my social circles. So I appreciate your time.
I hope it worked, man. I hope the guy gets the point.
Yeah, for sure. No, I've got some friends that are pretty astute, and they're doing well. They're investing in crypto and Bitcoin and Ethereum as a spoke in the wheel of their retirement eventually. So they're being smart about it. But I've got a couple people that you just got to take a little more time with. So
yeah.
All right. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate your time.
John, thanks for having me. We'll see you next time.
Yep, we'll do it again.
Yeah.